Got to get myself
Hello, hello,
together.
hello. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to join us on this another of our lunch and learn session. It is Friday and it's actually September 15th. And oh, how time is passing. But here we are, one more Friday, here to share with you on the topic leading from the inside out. Leading from the inside out. And with me is my co host, Dr. Marcia Thomas Howell. And Dr. Marcia is actually joining us from out of Jamaica. She is a Christian leadership coach and consultant. She's also a facilitator and a trainer, leadership trainer. And there is our other co host, Dr. Sigfred Howell. Dr. Howell is joining us from the United States of America over there in Delaware. And he is a life, happiness, and relationship coach and consultant. And as usual, I'm yours truly, Dr. Janice Brooks, joining you from the beautiful Sunshine State. And I am a John Maxwell certified leadership coach. I'm also a life strategist and a licensed pastoral counselor. But today we will be talking about this topic that is so relevant, leading from the inside out. And we know that one of the greatest challenges to leaders today is to be able to connect with people from the inside, to be able to lead with authenticity and be able to provide value at the same time. And so we are going to just be discussing this topic today because we want to help all leaders who are watching us today, and every person who is watching us today is actually a leader because we're all leaders in different spheres of life. Many of us are leaders in the workplace, in our businesses, in the home, in the school, in the church, everywhere we go, in our family. Most importantly, we are leaders of ourselves, and self leadership requires us to lead from the inside out. So I am going to go right to one of my co hosts this evening, who is Dr. Marcia. And Dr. Marcia, I want you to talk a little bit to our audience today. We're going to be wrapping up in about 25 minutes today, but I want you to talk to our audience today. What exactly is this leading from inside out? And then how does a leader communicate vision and strategy to motivate their team or the inner circle?
All right, there is a phrase that said, and I use it today as I pinned in my newsletter, that who you are is how you lead. Who you are is how you lead. You really cannot. It is a myth if we think that we can separate our core values and the things that mean the most to us from our leadership. It does impact and it does influence our leadership. And so, leading from the inside out is that deep place that you lead from that makes your walk and your talk match. So, they are not in competition, they collaborate. So your talk is reflected in your actions. And so that deep and personal place allows you to become so self aware that you are able to manage your emotions and the emotions of others. You are also able to see how you trigger, what triggers you, and how you trigger others. And for that reason, you present or you come at all times authentic and unapologetic because you know yourself, you trust yourself, and you love yourself because you are just being yourself. There are a number of leadership performers out there. They do the right things and say the right things, and they appear to have a handle on it, on leadership. But after a while, they are not able to manage, and their true self comes out. And for that reason, there is a mistrust, and there is a lack of faith, and there is also a lack of respect and a lack of authority in them And persons find that the superficial leadership now wears thin. Now, every leader has a vision or must have a vision. Why? The vision is their why and how they plan to get persons to collaborate around their why. And many systems and many documents call it buying into your vision. How do you allow your followers to buy into your vision? First of all, when you know your vision, you must be able to communicate your vision in the language of those who you want to be a part of your vision. I will go further to say, if in putting your vision out there are persons who you are selling your vision to who desire affirmation and recognition, then you make sure that your vision is communicated in the language of their expertise and their wisdom. You call on them to give their aspect, or what is it that how they think about what you're presenting, what your goals are, what your vision is. If there are persons who want power, then you want to sell your vision by making sure that these persons understand that it will be distributed and shared, and this is the place and this is how you want them to frame out in your vision. And then you must be very compelling in that you must not at any time ignore the feedback and wisdom of those who, or the input of those who you are selling your vision to. And the final thing I want to say is that your vision must inspire and motivate persons to want to be a part of such a good thing. And if you're able to do that, and allow them to see how it fits with their personal core values also and their beliefs, then the buy-in will be a little smoother.
Wonderful. Wow. Excellent points made there, Dr. Marcia, about really communicating that vision and that strategy to the team. This is what we're talking about, leading from the inside. And if I were to add how you can actually inspire trust and confidence in your team or your inner circle as a leader, leading from the inside out, I would actually start with this point from my mentor, John Maxwell. Everyone know that I'm a John Maxwell certified leadership trainer. John Maxwell said that most people don't have faith in themselves. And so you have to believe in people before they believe in themselves. And that is one way to inspire confidence and trust in people, to believe in people before they even believe in themselves. And the second thing to inspire trust and confidence in people is to allow people to know that they can be themselves. They can be themselves. They don't have to be anybody else than who they are. Someone said, I believe it was Nancy Dorman, has a quote that says, when you believe in people, they do the impossible. Let people know that they can be themselves before you start to communicate any vision or strategy or anything to them. The other thing I'm going to say to inspire trust and confidence in people is to allow people or to show them how to live up to their true potential. Let them know that there is something inside of them greater than they are already displaying, and help them to live up to that true potential. And so you will inspire that trust and confidence in them when they know that you're not just about yourself as a leader, because many leaders are just about themselves and not about the people who they lead. So those are just a few ways that you can inspire trust and confidence in your people. Another way that I would also say that you can inspire trust and confidence is when you communicate to your team. Communicate to them openly. When you communicate, whatever that's a vision or a strategy, Communicate as best as possible. Let it be an open communication so that there is no secondhand information that goes around and may dilute the original intent or purpose of what you needed to communicate. And the last thing I'm going to say before I ask Dr. Howell to comment is also give people time and space. Sometimes we fluster people as leaders. We are just like in the netbacks. We need to give them some time and space for them to really come into themselves. People learn at different pace. People have different ways that they learn and communicate. Let's give them some time and some space so that they can really communicate and come into themselves. And when we do that, we do inspire trust and confidence in people. Dr. Howell, and having said that, I want you to share, how do we foster innovation? Because we talked about communicate the vision. Dr. Marcia said that. I talked about the inspiring of the trust and confidence. Now I want you to talk a little bit, because we're talking about leading from within. How do we foster innovation and creative problem solving skills in our team and in that inner circle?
I'm glad you asked that question. There are a couple of things that come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is the fact that leadership has changed over the last 30 years. Back in the 70s, 80s, there's a transformation that took place where back then the leadership was one person who disseminated knowledge to the managers, and the managers sent the information down to their cohorts. And so what happened is that the leader had the vision and the leader made all the decisions, but everyone had to carry on what was being said, even if they did not agree with the leader. Since then, we've come up with servant leadership. We've come up with so many different types of leadership. And one of the main things that we talk about now when it comes to leadership is appreciative inquiry, where you get the ideas and the thoughts of all of the people in a company, or all of the people that are subordinates, before the managers and before the decisions before the leaders make the final decision. And the reason for that is there's so many different perspectives that you can get from all of the people who work, or all of the people who have a part to play in that company's success. And there's a lot of times there's a disconnect between the leadership and the people on the lowest level of each department. And if you remember, if you were here for a couple of programs back, we talked about the fact that organizations can be looked at as living organisms in themselves. So each department is a living system that has its own culture, it has its own makeup, it has its own way of doing things. And a lot of times, if leadership don't go around to each of these different subgroups within the organization, they do not have a pulse for what is going on. So appreciative inquiry allows everyone to take part in the problem solving process so that they can promote creative thinking and identifying new perspectives. Because just like leadership has changed over the last 30 years, problem solving has changed over the last 30 years. For example, one of the newest things that they've been talking about are the 5 whys. When instead of just looking at a problem and jumping right into solving it, you ask the question why, and you do that 5 different times, and it takes you a little closer to the actual problem versus a symptom of a deeper underlying problem. And so there's always innovation, and there's always different ways to solve a problem. Another thing that they found is not only can you have the right solution, but the wrong resources, you have to make sure that your problem solving technique aligns with the time resources and talent that your company has, because you can have a right response that can solve that problem, but it may not be the right time because you might have a missing peg in that engine that stops the whole process from being completed to the end. And so being able to see all the different pieces and being able to say, based on my resources and time, this is the best solution. Now, another way to look at it is the 1-3-1 process, which is one way to identify the real problem, 3 possible strategies, and then 1 way forward. So if you give yourself 3 probable problem-solving opportunities, but then identify which one of those 3 is the best way to move forward. So when people come with a problem, you don't just say, hey, this is a problem. You can say, this is a problem, but here are 3 possibilities. So now people are coming with some positivity to a problem versus just throwing problems at people and don't have any solutions. The next thing, allowing time for exploration and experimentation. A third thing is removing barriers of burdensome processes. You have to streamline the problem-solving problem as much as possible so that things are easier to get to completion. Reward successes and intelligent failures. Because when people think that they're going to get dinged or penalized for being creative, they're not going to open up. They're not going to be as innovative or as creative. So leaders must be willing to take responsibility for failures, especially when their subordinates came up with a solution that looked by all intents and purposes should have been successful, but they're not successful. And then finally, if you facilitate collaboration and transparency across all teams or across all departments, then you can have a better problem-solving process, because the media group might have a problem-solving process that might help the innovation group or the problem-solving group or the hospitality group or the HR group. So don't assume that each department is its own entity. There is a cross relationship, because the company as a whole is a living organism, but each department is a smaller living organism that feeds into the larger organism.
I am actually loving this conversation because it's going really deep. I believe that we're actually talking about some seminar topics and some workshop topics right here, because Dr. Howell has really deepened this conversation going into cross-functional teams and departments and all of that, and how they all come together to solve problems. Yes, and questions. I am loving it. Dr. Marcy, I know we have limited time, so I'm hopping over to you at this time, because I want you to kind of talk a little bit about how to develop talent and leadership capabilities in your team or in your inner circle, because we do know that the best leaders bring out the best in people. How do you do that?
And it is also said, Dr. Brooks, that the best leaders do not create followers, they create leaders, because they allow persons to become their best self. So what you do is that you, and that is a double-edged sword. As I make reference to what Dr. Howell said, where leadership is from the top down, even though there are variations and we are gradually getting there where leadership is now shared and distributed, we are still suffering from the mentality that leaders must know and they must do everything. So sometimes even your organizations, when you want or motivate or encourage persons to take responsibility, they live with the false impression that you are a lazy leader and you don't want to do anything, and you're the one getting the money, and you're the one that everybody is giving everything. And they don't understand that anytime you have to leave, retire, or move on, then they are gonna need leaders. And the careful succession planning develop the talents and capabilities of those who you have in your team and on your team, so that everyone can do their due justice to what they have to do. And there are times when, in developing the talent, you have to push them into the water and you have to watch them appearing to drown because nobody learned to swim on land. You have to go into the water. And sometimes we become macro managers because we give people a task to do, and we are so, as you said before, breathing down their necks that their innovation and creativity cannot come out. They cannot add their scent or leave their mark on what they are to do, because it must mirror what you are saying. And many times those who we say we are developing and who we carry forward as leaders are just compliance officers. We promote them and we call them exceptional because of the level of compliance in that they mirror our thoughts and their thoughts are not able to come out. So to develop talent and to have persons express or show what they can produce, you have to give them opportunities. You have to create pathways in your organization where they get opportunities to attempt to do what they know how to do it, and learn from their mistakes, so they are now able to not to make similar mistakes in the future. So you are really allowing them to learn on the job. That's what developing skills and capabilities do. You allow them to learn on the job, to make the mistakes, a trial run if you want. The next thing is that you must make them think about critically what they have to contend with, how it is affecting them, and come up with solutions. And when they do, you must respect their wisdom and their expertise and their thoughts and ideas. And you must be very open to try them with the possibility that they might not work. But every leader starts right there. They make numerous attempts and they encounter numerous failures that we now call mistakes. Those who have learned from very, very bad leaders feel that they have lost their way when that happens, or they are costly, or they have become a liability. But those who learn from effective leaders understand that they must not see it as a failure. They must now see it as an opportunity to learn and to improve their practice and their capabilities and develop maturity and skill as a leader.
Wow. I think we're going to have to go deeper somewhere into this topic because we could not even half exhaust it. Thank you so much, Dr. Marcia. That was excellent. That is actually a way, so many ways of developing the talents and the leadership capabilities of the team. Dr. Howell, as we come down to our closing, how do we as leaders make tough decisions? And I know that this is something that is challenging for many leaders, but make these tough decisions with impartiality and care for the subordinates and even the stakeholders. How do we as leaders make those decisions?
I want to answer that question with two stories. The first story kind of goes to what Dr. Thomas was saying, Dr. Marcia was saying. A lot of people say, you know, I went to school, I got the education, and so I know how to do it. Well, that is the lowest form of knowing, just book work. The second highest form is actually getting in and doing it, experience. But the highest form of leadership comes from the mistakes you make, learning, adapting, and moving forward. And so where I want to challenge people is like from what Dr. Marcia was saying, learning from the mistakes and moving forward is the most effective way of leadership, because it means that you've taken the book work, you've taken the doing part, but now you're actually learning and moving forward. Now, with that being said, how do you make the tough decisions? Well, first, you get samples from each spectrum of that particular organization. Once again, appreciative inquiry. You get people from all areas of the organization and you get their input. and then you consider the pros and the cons and the consequences, both known and unknown. You have to also prepare for unknown consequences because things can also go awry. You be able to explain the rationale for why you're taking this particular stance, but also use emotional intelligence by knowing these are hard decisions. So yes, I know people are going to be hurting. I know people might suffer. And this is what we're trying to do to reduce the effects. Not just one department is going to suffer. We're all going to try and take it as a family. We're all going to take a little bit of a hit so that everyone can recover and move forward after that's done. Treating people with empathy and respect. I know you might be laid off, so here is a compensation package that will help you as you transition to your next places of employment. You know, things that are necessary. Let people know that you care for them. Don't just tell them, oh, next week you're jobless and we don't have money for you. But then the leadership is still getting those multi-million-dollar bonuses, you know. And so taking responsibility for the outcomes. A lot of times people give leaders a hard time for making that much money, but not doing that much. But you also have to remember the leader is the one that takes the brunt of whatever goes awry. And so they're getting paid for the risk of making those decisions. And that's what we fail to that's what we fail to understand. When the little people make mistakes, not much is going to happen in the company. But when the big people make those mistakes, it's usually millions and billions that are involved in the process. So yeah, heads have to roll. And the stress that comes with having to make those mistakes, that comes with, once again, with experience and also with mistakes that you've learned from along the way. And so once you get to that point, you're willing to make mistakes, or you're willing to take risks because you are deserving of that particular status right there. And so it's easy to look at them and point fingers, but they have the greatest responsibility because they're the ones that can bankrupt the company versus individual people in the smaller departments that don't have as much role to play.
Wow. I love that. And when you talk about the the monies that they get, those big bonuses and things, I said, sometimes they get too much, Dr. Howell. But anyway, I'm loving this conversation. Love it. And the thing I want to go, I want to say as I go into the last few minutes of the session is, leaders have to get to that place where they actually demonstrate the ability to guide their team. And again, I'm referring again to John Maxwell. He said, a leader cannot take someone where they have not gone before. If you're trying to take someone where you have never gone before, you're in a problem, because you will not be able to truly guide them. Both of you are going there blind. And so leaders have to first develop themselves, make sure that they have the ability to lead their team before they can lead their team. And we know nowadays that there are many persons, and this is no disrespect to leaders, there are many persons who are in leadership positions that have not been able to lead themselves as yet. They have not developed themselves as yet, but they have been placed in positions where they are unable to lead others. And so they come upon this mountain before them, and sometimes they don't know how to cross, whether to go around it, whether to tunnel through it, or whether to climb over it. And that's a challenge these days. But I just want to say as I close that leaders understands people. There are 4 things that leaders do. They help to motivate people. They mentor people. They multiply the people that they manage or they lead, and they model for the people. So people should be able to look up to leaders and say, well, my leader did that and I know it's the right thing and I'm trying to do the same thing. People should be multiplied when they're under a leader. They should not be divided or feel small. They should be able to be themselves, to know that this is who I am and I am part of this team. And so this thing of leadership, self-leadership, and leading from the inside out is not an easy task. It's not even something that we can discuss in a day or even in a week. But as we continue to open these discussions, these lunch and learns on a Friday, and the audio sessions on Tuesday morning at 7:45 a.m., we want to make sure that we help persons in a small way to understand these topics of leadership that we are putting out in these sessions. And so, Dr. Marcia, I want you to add your final comments to this discussion, and then Dr. Howell is going to add his final comments about leading from inside out. If you were to leave 2 or 3 sentences with our audience today, what would those be?
I would want to say that a leader who is mirroring the thoughts of the top executives, you're not really leading, you're just taking a walk in the park. Because you are just a compliance officer. So that's the first thing I want to leave. Leaders do something for themselves. They leave a mark. They amplify the voices of those who they represent. And so if you are mirroring the thoughts of those who have hired you to lead, you're just taking a walk. The next thing is that leaders must understand that if you do not know your why, then you will always be stuck at what you have been asked to do. You will always have a title and a position, but you will never have significance if you never ask the question why and know your why. The final sentence I want to say is that leaders who do not know themselves are just masquerades on a stage.
Wow. Dr. Howell, this is getting hot at the end here. Go ahead and add your final comments today.
Well, I really cannot add much to what she said, but I will say this. I had the opportunity to watch the show Undercover Boss. And in that particular show, they were leaders of the company or owners of the company. They dressed up and disguised themselves, and they worked on the ground level of their companies. And they got to hear how the subordinates talked about the leadership, talked about the management, and talked about the packages and the products that they were selling. And then at the end of 1 week or 2 weeks, they would reveal, yes, I am the owner of the company. And there were so many people who were not loyal to the company that were being employed. And then there were people who had problems and situations that the boss had the opportunity to help. But there was such a big disconnect. In most of those shows, it was such a big disconnect between the leadership and the employees that the leader said, man, we have to change X, Y, and Z because I did not know it was that bad. And these are small companies. So what about the Amazon? What about the, I don't know if you remember, but there was an article that they were talking about that the Amazon employees could not use the bathroom. They were urinating into bottles and stuff because they didn't even get a time out to go for the bathroom break because they had to get so many things on the truck or so many things packed. And so we look at Amazon and we're like, oh man, that's such an awesome company. But what are the employees saying? Because my wife always says this, your front desk people are the ones that make or break the company. If they're not happy, eventually the company will fall apart. Eventually they'll lose money because the customer and the front row employees, those that are in the front line that interact with the customers on a daily basis, if they are not happy, they would not give quality to the customer. And in the end, less customers will be there. So employers need to make sure they understand the pulse of the lower end people so that the company does not get affected by bad service.
Very
Wow.
much so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Howell. That was a great way to end this session today. And a navigator is a person who sees the destination. When we talk about a ship, we talk about the ship navigator. And that is who a leader is. Leroy Ames said a leader is one who sees more than others see, who sees further than others see, and who sees before others do. And that is who a leader is. That's the very word lead, to go up front and to do before others do. We want to thank you so much for joining us today for this another Lunch and Learn session. I have really learned so much just listening to these other two co-hosts right here. And we are available at any time to speak with you and your team to do your workshops, your training sessions, your leadership sessions, your lunch and learns, your mastermind. We are available for any one of these. You can contact us. We are actually live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. You can find us on any of those. Connect with us, and we will be happy to help you and your team to learn and to grow. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Please meet us again on Tuesday morning at 7:45 a.m. when we discuss another topic that we believe is relevant, if not critical, to your forward movement and destiny. I want to say thanks again to my co-host, Dr. Marcia Thomas and Dr. Siegfried Howell, for being excellent co-hosts. Have a great weekend, everyone, and God bless you all.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.